Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Legend of Zelda. Lewis got sick and won't be here for a couple of parts. Princess.
That was
Rip
a gimme.
Lewis.
What was your original title?
Probably something about entering the dungeon. I didn't think of one, so...
Wow, they're actually improv on the fly.
Sometimes they are. It's usually like 30 seconds before we start, like, oh crap, if I'm going to keep this going, I scrub through the video, and I'm like, okay. I came up with something. So anyway, in this part, we finally go into the Zora
We also have a long section of skirting Link.
Heck yes.
You see, Link can't be the most powerful Nintendo character because he doesn't have an alternate dimension up his pants like Princess Peach does. So,
Or Rosalina.
Or
Rosalina.
Rosalina, yeah. Also, can I just say that I like how Lewis ended up like skipping out right when we got to the dungeon.
yeah, which is
He was here for all of the optional
I'm
stuff
not
and like
interested in the interesting parts.
like because this is
Oh,
like
Lewis.
actually, I find one of the more divisive dungeons in the game. People either really like it or hate it. Well, which I mean, I suppose makes sense because it's the water.
It's the water.
I feel the water temples are always like that though.
Well, most of the time, the major exception is Ocarina of Time, where everybody just hates it.
I like it.
Honest, I wouldn't say I like it, but I think it's not that bad. You know,
I originally detested Great Bay Temple for Majora's Mask.
I still hate it.
Great Bay. I still dislike Great Bay.
I still
I
abhor
actually
that
like it now.
That dungeon.
you see, I never got that
It's the
far.
worst dungeon in the game by far for me.
Well, the only one I ever beat was the wood one. I don't even remember
Woodfall?
the name. Woodfall. Yeah.
Woodfall.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I didn't get that far in Majora's Mask. Even when I went back to replay it, it just I don't know. It's weird because thinking about other games that I like, I feel like I should like Majora's Mask more than I do, even if you take into account, you know, me not understanding it when I was like 8 years old. Because I like games like Pikmin 1 and Dead Rising, which are very huge on time limits, you know? So I feel like...
I mean, the time limit in Majora's Mask is very, very, like, almost non-existent. It's basically just there to give everyone schedules, and other than that, there's, like, no pressure or anything, so...
Did you try and replay it on the 3DS?
Not on the 3DS, but I did, like, a couple of months before...
I think you would have an easier time on the 3DS.
Yes. Like, there's a lot of, like, I have a lot of issues with the Majora's Mask 3DS version, like, a lot of issues, but the things that they fix, they really fix.
So,
Yeah.
what did they make worse? Because from what I've seen...
They made the Zora
Swimming.
significantly worse.
Absolutely
The Zora
swimming.
swimming is worse, and honestly, I feel the bosses are a downgrade.
Yeah, the bosses are absolutely a downgrade, too.
What
but,
did
I
they
mean, that's-
change
that's-
about them?
They're
they
they're a
made
lot
them
they're a lot
easier.
more just basic pattern based rather than actually
Yeah.
No,
It's like-
I think that they made them more heavily revolve around the transformations, and it's
well, that's also debatable, question mark.
Weren't they always like that, though?
Nah, not to an extent of the way 3D handles it, because you know, with the to use the Odawa as an example, you didn't have to use Deku Link to like destroy him. You can just do well-timed arrows and spin slashes. Odawa in 3D requires that you use Deku to land on, like, to drop Deku seeds on his head because that's where his weakness is.
Huh.
But in the midstream, that makes him like stupid easy because like he just stands around and takes it essentially. So.
And as much as I love the concept of using the Giant's Mask or the whatever they use for Stone Temple, and you can like use wrestling moves on Twin Mold, it drags that battle out so hard.
I kind of have to disagree with that one. I
Okay.
actually really like the way that they changed that specific boss. Like, that's the one boss that I'll look at and I'll be like, ah, yes, this is better. Mainly because it actually feels like a threat and they're not just, like, wandering around and you have to go and chase them. They actually come to you and it's like, ah, okay, I can actually, like, punch the crap out of them. It does take a little bit longer, but I feel like that's not as much of an issue when like in the original, if you ran out of magic, you were completely boned. You were just completely
No,
boned.
you still had arrows.
You did still have arrows, but like,
Yeah.
you know,
And
It was
it made
still
things a
very
lot.
iffy.
It made things a lot harder and awkward. I think
Yeah.
is being the key there. I just thought the battle dragged in 3D. Despite
It
again,
did.
I love the idea of just like giant young Link swinging the worm around.
Wouldn't that just
Like,
be
okay,
normal
maybe
Link?
I'm giving it a little bit more
Yeah.
points than I should because I just love that so much.
Yeah.
As soon as I realized what you had to do to them, I was just like, all right, this is a lot better. I greatly prefer just like choking the crap out of this big worm. That sounds awful, but still.
But I verily believe that 3D Majora's Mask has a lot more quality of life updates that just makes the game
Yes.
better to jump into if you had troubles with the N64 game.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, I did hear people say things like, oh, it's too easy to tell what people are doing on their schedule now. And that's the kind of thing where I just kind of raise my eyebrow when people make that complaint. But the bosses do seem like
I
a
mean,
legitimate...
being too easy is a potential complaint for anything.
Well, the thing is that I
Majora's
raise my
Mask in the
eyebrow
first
because
place-
Majora's Mask is obnoxiously
Already.
cryptic.
It's a very obtuse game. So I agree with you there, but I just hate when people say, "Oh, being too easy is not a valid complaint because it's everyone." Some game is everyone's first game. It's like, no, it can still be a valid complaint.
Well, I more meant
Yeah.
it's specifically too easy to know what people's schedule are. And that, I don't think you can make it too easy. And like,
No,
it's like,
because it doesn't tell you what
Yeah.
the solutions are. It just tells you when people are going to be doing
When
certain
they're
things.
going to be around.
yeah, I agree that a game can be too easy. That's the reason why Kirby's Epic Yarn doesn't do anything for me, because Kirby games are always
Oh, that's
easy,
so
but
cute.
there's... Okay,
There's no punishment for failure in that game.
I mean, there's no punishment for failure in Odyssey either, technically. And that's still a fantastic game.
I think the difference for me between something like Odyssey and Epic Yarn is that I still felt like I had to try in order to beat certain challenges, but I could then make the choice that I don't feel like doing this one and get something else instead. Whereas in Kirby's Epic Yarn, I didn't feel like I felt like I kind of just held right the entire time and beat
yeah,
most
I think
of the
that
levels.
I think that's more of a product of like what kind of games they were.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I'm willing to be a little more forgiving with Epic Yarn because that was definitely deliberate on their
Yeah,
end.
that's a game made for young children. So
Excuse me, but I like
Kirby, Kirby's for babies. Kirby's such a baby.
I play Kirby all the time, and I have the thickest of beards.
Well,
Gerard's
honestly,
not here.
there are people like that, like who are like, oh no, Kirby's actually really hardcore because of lore, and I'm like, look, Kirby is a
No.
game for babies, but that doesn't mean you can't like it. I like that Kirby's a baby game, because honestly, I'm playing Kirby 9 times out of 10 because I don't want to play something super challenging. Like I ignore arena mode almost every single time I can, because I'm not in the mood to deal with that. Please and thank you. Anyway, I hope you like this room because you're gonna be in it a lot.
Oh, I hate this room. I dislike this room.
Oh, this is
As
the one
soon
with the
as you
staircase.
entered that door, I was like, oh boy.
Hi, Water
I
Temple,
had
you're
some
back again.
flashbacks.
I think the big thing about it is that there's less to manipulate than in the Water Temple, so it's more manageable, I guess. Because you have a specific goal.
It's weird. It's less There's less to manipulate, but at the same time, it's much easier to get yourself turned around.
I
Yeah,
think that's
everything
because
looks
the
the
dungeon's
same.
very symmetrical, is the big
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
Everything absolutely looks the same here, and like I feel like you're almost more limited in where you can go. So like you're running into dead ends a lot.
I think part of that is due to the nature of the Water Temple was one of the last dungeons in Ocarina of Time, and this is one of the first in this game. So
Yeah, that's true too.
you had more options in the Water Temple, which made you have to try more things for certain puzzles. The Water Temple, part of why you see, it's been so long since I played Ocarina of Time, I can't really even tell if I would like it or dislike it if I were to go back and play it again. Because I remember thinking, oh man, people are over. You can't roll up these stairs. Worst game ever. 0 out of 10. I remember when I was playing it the first time, I was like, this is what people were complaining about? Wet man, what a bunch of wusses. I can't remember if I actually enjoyed playing it or not. But one thing that I do appreciate is that that's one of the only dungeons in that game where the third dimension is used extensively. Where you do have to look up and down in every room in order to try to figure your way out around in a 3-dimensional space.
Well,
Yeah,
that's using water though is the
If
thing.
there's one thing that I can say about the Ocarina of Time Water Temple is that one of the big weaknesses of it, and I think where a lot of the frustration from people comes from, is the iron boots and how it was an equipment piece in the first iteration of it, and not the 3DS version. So half of your time in that dungeon was just spent in menus.
Yeah, because you were like,
So that
okay,
was
I gotta
real
go.
frustrating.
I gotta go down a
A
little
really
bit.
big point of
Blim,
why
blim, blim,
why people selling the 3D version is that you can equip the iron boost to a slot.
Yeah,
Yes.
So
it was a
much
C.
better.
And that alone like cut the time in half.
I,
Yep.
I was gonna call it a C button item, but it's not the C button in 3DS.
It's the same thing.
I know, but there are some like I still can't watch Link's legs get decapitated there. Link's legs.
It's cool.
They
The suit will protect me.
so like it's one of those things where I will still call it like the C button items, even though it's like the L and R or something on 3DS or like the 1 and 2.
The equipment
Or
items.
X and
X, Y, and then the
X
1 and 2 tab
Y.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just weird. Like I know there are plenty of people who will call it Z targeting instead of L targeting, even though it's only Z targeting in 2 games and L
Yeah,
targeting.
a
like,
force of habit.
Yeah.
I say Z targeting still.
Yeah.
This is a surprisingly big dungeon for where it is in the game.
Yeah, it's. I think part of it. There's actually not that much of a gap between the third and fourth dungeon too, as long if you don't, go out of your way to do the myriad of extra crap. Like there's a lot in between Dungeon 1 and Dungeon 2, in Dungeon 2 and Dungeon 3, but in between Dungeon 3 and Dungeon 4, I think is where the game really picks up its pace, and by that I mean the pacing starts to be good. And here,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're not wasting half an hour just to hunt down bugs when you kind of just want to get a move on.
What Zelda games do you feel like have the biggest like jump in difficulty or obtrusiveness?
Zelda 1, Zelda 1.
Well, I always kind
You say Zelda
of let
1?
me just be faced with that saying that I always throw out the first game in a series because they're just trying to figure shit out.
Well, in Zelda, you can definitely do that because Zelda 1 is nothing like anything
I would
else.
say the one that comes to mind the most from that, John, is probably I would say Link's Awakening.
If you're talking Eagle Tower and Turtle Rock.
Yeah, because you're getting a lot of weird shit going on that you don't really think to do, and you have a lot of obtuse item combinations you wouldn't think to do.
I didn't play like a whole lot of the handheld Zeldas, so I can't really say much in that way.
Yeah, I
but,
only
like,
played like maybe
Does
an
Master
hour.
Quest count? Because there's a lot of really cryptic crap in that.
Master Quest, like from what I've seen,
technically
there's
Ocarina
like
of
you have to
Time,
go
but,
back to
like-
child mode like every 2 minutes in the second half of the game.
Yeah,
Not really, but in the
it's-
Spirit Temple specifically, yes, and it's dumb.
It's not exactly a good mode, I feel.
Yeah, it definitely has a lot of challenges. But if we're talking like main series Zelda, I don't know, Wind Waker because of the stupid charts.
Oh, if you're talking pacing, then that's probably the biggest one. If we're talking difficulty, I mean, I haven't
like,
played a lot.
I've never particularly had any problems in the way of like difficulty and like actually getting through the game, except for my interest levels. When I feel my interest levels drop, then
if
I'm
you're
just
interested
like,
in trying to see what you feel for that, I would definitely say give like Link's Awakening and the Oracle games a try,
I've honestly always wanted to.
because
so,
they're fine enough games, but they're very weirdly done in terms of how their difficulty works.
Yeah, but I think that's why like people will like to them that's why they love the game so much because they're
they're
oddities in the series.
yeah, but I personally just find that more awkward than fun.
I just find Link's Awakening tedious. Like I know people will defend that game neck and neck, and that's fine. That's cool. I won't argue that. It's just that I personally just find it as a watered down Link to the Past.
Well,
with
I mean,
a lot
it
of with a
is.
lot of just really annoying menu
No,
shifting.
I think it does. I think it does enough things different. But my problem is just more of how it's set up.
Yeah.
I only really played
and-
like a couple of hours of Link's Awakening, and I just kind of found it annoying to traverse. Is the thing like I didn't like the overworld in that game.
It's a game I think that would have been much better if it wasn't on Game Boy.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you could say that for a lot of games on Game Boy. To be fair, though.
Not quite. I would say the Oracle games are perfectly fine on Game Boy.
Really?
If only because they're more designed for the Game Boy, because it's a well-known fact that Link's Awakening was going to be just a Link to the Past on Game Boy, and then the project changed so much that they just made something
Oh wait,
different.
Link to the Past was going to be a
Huh.
Link to the what? Sorry, Link's Awakening was going to be a Link to the Passport.
Yeah,
Oh wow! I
or
never
like,
knew
didn't
or
know
that.
just the Game Boy version, like how there was the Donkey Kong Land and that stuff.
Oh,
Donkey Kong
huh.
Line, pretty much equivalent.
Oh, okay.
Legitimately did not know that.
Yeah, that's interesting.